Not all of a family's darkest secrets are locked away in safes or hidden behind closed doors. Sometimes they reveal themselves in the silence of an empty room, in the muffled cry of a child, or in the fake smile of someone pretending to love. The story of Michael, Victoria, and the triplets is a powerful reminder that the truth always finds a way to surface, even when everyone believes it's well hidden. And here's the thing. Every detail of this narrative will captivate you, because it goes beyond fiction. It's about choices, about trust, and about how masks always fall. If you enjoy raw, intense stories full of twists, subscribe to the channel now. That way you won't miss a single episode and can keep following narratives that might just change the way you see the world around you. There are moments when life surprises us with an unexpected return. Michael, after a long business trip, decided to come home without warning. It was already past midnight when the key turned in the lock and the door opened, revealing the home he had missed so much. Deep down, he carried with him the anticipation of reuniting with the warmth of his family. As soon as he crossed the entrance, he was greeted with warm embraces and passionate kisses from Victoria, his young wife. She seemed overwhelmed by an almost unbearable longing, as if she had been waiting for that moment for days. The immediate contact restored in Michael a sense of belonging, as if every gesture of hers was an invitation to forget the distance that had separated them. Silence filled the house, broken only by the soft sound of nightly breathing. Michael thought of his children, the 5-year-old triplets, Ethan, Emma, and Noah. He imagined them sleeping in their rooms, protected by the comfort of their blankets. He did not dare disturb them, for they had always been light sleepers, and any noise could spark cries and complaints. He chose instead to let them rest in peace. He walked into the master bedroom and lay down beside Victoria. In that moment, he believed everything was in order, that life was finally offering him a break after days of exhaustion and responsibilities. It felt like a reunion and a relief, as though the home had restored in seconds what the world outside had drained. Yet what cannot be seen often weighs more than what meets the eye. Michael rested with the certainty that his house was intact, never imagining that every wall held secrets yet to be revealed. The apparent comfort could easily deceive even the most attentive. Returning home always brings a mixture of emotions. Some feel the immediate security of being back, while others sense that the time away has left imperceptible marks. Michael, lulled by his wife's affection, believed he was picking up right where he had left off, without realizing that a single moment can carry profound transformations. The trust in that scene seemed unshakable. Victoria enveloped him with sweetness, as if the time apart had been nothing more than a detail. Michael accepted the gesture without questions, without noticing that, amidst the warmth of those embraces, something was slipping beyond his perception. The home, which meant so much to him, presented itself as a safe haven, and like so many who return after days away, he surrendered to that comforting feeling, never suspecting that much more was unfolding than he could imagine. That silent night, between passionate kisses and the weight of the journey, Michael had no idea his story was about to take an unexpected turn, one filled with mysteries and revelations that would forever change the fate of his family. In the silence of the night, when everyone seems to be resting, small noises can sound like screams to the soul. Michael, waking with thirst, walked through the house in search of water. The simple act of opening the refrigerator brought with it an unexpected revelation. A child's cry, fragile yet insistent. Doubt flashed through his mind like lightning, leaving him instantly on alert. His first thought was to dismiss the possibility, to believe that exhaustion was playing tricks on his ears. After all, after days of travel, the body begs for rest, and the mind creates illusions. But that cry would not stop, it would not fade with reason. It was real, tangible, and seemed to plead for help in the darkness of the night. He paused for a moment, his fingers still gripping the refrigerator door. The sound repeated, muffled, coming from somewhere distant within the house. His heart raced, pounding harder with each second. There was no way to ignore it. It was the voice of innocence being stifled somewhere inside those walls. The environment, once welcoming, now took on a somber tone. Every shadow cast seemed to hide secrets. Every creak on the floor seemed to reveal hidden mysteries. The home that symbolized peace began to transform into the stage of deep unease. Michael, overcome by a chill down his spine, knew he had to. He took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. It wasn't just any noise, it was a call. The cry of a child carries a force capable of breaking through any barrier, awakening immediate protective instincts. Michael felt that weight and urgency as if it were an invisible command guiding him. As he walked down the hallways, the sound grew closer and stronger. It was not the product of imagination. It was not an echo of fatigue. It was real, undeniable, and it blended with the absolute silence of the night. With every step, his mind searched for answers, but his heart already knew something was wrong. It's curious how in moments like this time seems to distort. Seconds stretch into hours and every detail takes on overwhelming intensity. Michael felt sweat trickle down his forehead, even in the chill of the night. Doubt turned into fear, and fear into determination. He knew that the truth, however painful it might be, had to be uncovered. The sound could not be ignored, for ignoring it would mean abandoning what he treasured most, his children, and that was a price he would never be willing to pay. The night, once silent, had now become a stage of tension. The cry still echoed, as if calling his name. Michael was about to discover that the sound was not just a warning, but the prelude to something much greater that was yet to come. Michael, consumed by the unease that the cry had stirred, rushed to the children's room. Each step echoed as if the house itself were trying to warn him of something terrible. When he opened the door, a piercing emptiness took hold of his soul. The beds which should have sheltered Ethan, Emma, and Noah were completely empty. The impact was immediate, as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. A father's heart, when confronted with the disappearance of his children, knows a panic that words can never truly describe. Michael felt his chest burn and his breath grow short, as though he were being suffocated by reality itself. That room, once a symbol of innocence and joy, now seemed ghostly. Toys were scattered, blankets were messy, but not a single trace of. The children filled the space. It was as if the silence itself screamed, mocking his helplessness. Michael knew something serious was happening. In a rush, he hurried back to the master bedroom. Anger and worry mixed in his eyes, and the image of his wife sleeping peacefully seemed almost like an insult. He shook Victoria, demanding answers, his voice laced with desperation and disbelief. The question tore through the night. "Where are my children?" Victoria opened her eyes slowly as though pulled from a deep sleep. Her expression was one of calculated confusion, a mask carefully crafted. She answered hesitantly, trying to minimize the weight of the moment. "What are you talking about, Michael? They must be sleeping somewhere." But those words fell like stones upon his heart. A father knows when something doesn't make sense, when logic is nothing but a curtain hiding the truth. Doubt was hardening into indignation. It was as if the entire house were conspiring to reveal secrets that Victoria was trying to conceal. The silence that followed was even more suffocating. Michael stared at his wife, searching every trace of her face. There was a mixture of fear, deceit, and disdain that was difficult to disguise. Trust, once solid, was beginning to shatter into 1,000 painful fragments. The sense of helplessness became more unbearable with every moment. Michael's heart pounded in an erratic rhythm, driven by the paternal instinct that accepts neither excuses nor illusions. He knew the answer was not in Victoria's words, but hidden somewhere deeper, where only raw truth could be found. And so, with his mind burning and his soul aflame, Michael understood that the night still had much more to reveal. The cry in the darkness had been only a prelude, and the empty beds were an undeniable sign that painful secrets were about to emerge. Michael rushed down the stairs, his heart racing, guided by the sound he could no longer ignore. The cry, clearer and closer now, seemed to cut through the walls and lead him toward the backyard. The cold night carried an unbearable weight, and every step felt like dragging an anguish too heavy to bear. When he opened the back door, the scene completely disarmed him. There were Ethan, Emma, and Noah, huddled together under the pouring rain. The children trembled, soaked to the bone, and the desperation in their eyes was a mirror reflecting the failure of a father who believed he had protected everything. Michael's strength dissolved in an instant. He ran to them, falling to his knees in the mud, embracing them with an urgency almost animalistic. He felt their cold skin pressed against his body, and a sharp pain tore through his soul. That image would never leave his memory. Without wasting time, he carried them inside as though rescuing a precious treasure on the verge of being lost. He placed them under the warm shower, trying to restore the heat stolen by the cruel night. Dressing them in clean clothes became a ritual of healing, a gesture of redemption in the face of their suffering. But what shattered his heart most was not the cold or the rain. It was the fragile whisper, spoken in unison by the three. "Daddy, we were hungry." Those simple, innocent words carried the unbearable weight of truth. Michael collapsed, unable to hold back his tears. His sobs mingled with theirs, forming a symphony of pain and love at the same time. It was the meeting of helplessness and the promise never to fail again. The tight embrace was his only possible answer, a desperate attempt to compensate for the emptiness left behind. The home, meant to be a shelter, had become a stage of abandonment. Michael felt every wall of the house silently accuse him, reminding him of the promise he had made to his late wife, never to let their children lack love or protection. In that instant, he realized he had been deceived by the illusion of safety. The tears streamed uncontrollably, but within them lay the seed of a decision. He would no longer be a spectator to their pain, no longer blind himself to appearances. The agony of that night would become a turning point, the line between naivete and unshakable determination. The night dragged on, but Michael's heart had already been forever changed. The storm outside seemed to announce a new reality. The truth could no longer be ignored, and with his children still trembling at his side, he understood that what was coming would be even more devastating. The dawn brought with it not only the light of the sun, but also the inevitable clarity of decisions that had to be made. Michael, exhausted from the previous night, carried in his eyes the mark of pain and indignation. Looking at his children, asleep on the couch was like gazing at a living reminder of the promise he had made to his late wife, never to let them go unprotected. With a heavy heart, he entered the master bedroom. Victoria, still lying in bed, rested as if nothing had happened. The contrast between her apparent calm and the chaos of the night made Michael's anger overflow. Without hesitation, he demanded that she pack her things and leave the house immediately. Startled, Victoria tried to justify herself. She said she wasn't well, that she had lost control only that day, begging for another chance. Her words sounded hollow, like rehearsed excuses. Michael, however, no longer had room for illusions. He now saw clearly the danger she represented to his children. With every plea she made, his heart grew even harder. The image of the triplets huddled in the rain haunted him, and no justification could erase it. Pain had turned into strength, and strength into an unshakable decision. It was time to fulfill his role as a father, even if it meant breaking with the woman he still loved. The moment was marked by screams, tears, and desperate pleas. Victoria fell to the floor, promising to change, promising to be different. But Michael would not be deceived again. The man who had returned from his trip believing in a happy home now discovered that his greatest battle was not at work, but within his own house. At last, with no other option, Victoria gathered her belongings. The silence in the air was heavy, as if every object carried the memory of a lie that could no longer continue. Michael watched without looking away, determined to protect what truly mattered: his children. When she crossed the door with her suitcases, the feeling was not of victory but of mourning. Mourning for the dream he had built that now lay shattered. Mourning for having believed in empty promises. Yet, deep down, there was also relief. The certainty that he was making the right choice. Back in the living room, Michael sat beside the triplets, who slept soundly as if their bodies had finally surrendered after the traumatic night. He wrapped them in his arms, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. He knew that from that moment on, his life would be forever changed. But as he remembered the promise made to his late wife, he also felt a spark of strength ignite within him. He was tired, yes, but determined. And though he didn't yet know, that decision would open the way for even greater challenges soon to knock at his door. The days that followed were a true test of endurance for Michael. The house, once scarred by the chaos of that night of pain, had now become a battlefield of daily life. Toys scattered across the floor, burnt pans on the stove, and the innocent quarrels of the triplets revealed the weight of being both father and mother at the same time. The silence Victoria had left was replaced by the uncontrollable noise of routine. In the middle of this whirlwind, a knock at the door interrupted the confusion. Michael, with a dish towel over his shoulder and hands still marked by household chores, opened the door without imagining what he would find. On the other side stood Victoria, beautiful, perfumed, and with a look of remorse that seemed carefully rehearsed. She presented herself with a convincing speech. She said she had sought medical help, showed a pack of prescribed medicine, and swore she was under treatment. Every word seemed chosen to inspire trust, as if the past could be erased with promises of change. Her seductive gaze and familiar perfume nearly shattered Michael's resolve. The triplets, however, did not react the same way. Ethan, Emma, and Noah watched her from a distance, wary, like wounded animals recognizing danger even in seemingly gentle gestures. Their cautious eyes were a silent reminder that emotional wounds do not heal so easily. Michael hesitated. His heart still carried memories of happier moments, and the weight of loneliness made his defenses fragile. The longing for a partner was real, and Victoria's words seemed to offer the chance to reclaim a piece of the life he had lost. It was like standing before a half-open door. Just one step, and he could believe again. Victoria spared no effort. She brought gifts for the children, smiled charmingly, and tried to play the part of the devoted wife she had never truly been. The atmosphere began to shift, as though the home was finding balance again, but trust was not being rebuilt at the same pace. With each of her gestures, Michael felt the weight of a difficult choice. Between reason and heart, balance seemed impossible. He knew the risk, yet clung to the hope that maybe the change was real. This doubt gnawed at him, like a shadow that refused to leave his side in every decision. Meanwhile, the triplets remained cautious. Their closeness to Victoria was limited, marked by watchful eyes and silence. Michael noticed this resistance but tried to believe that in time, the children's distrust would give way to affection. Still, a part of him could not ignore the silent warning etched on their faces, and so, the appearance of harmony began to take shape once more in the house. The chores were shared again, the responsibilities divided, and for a brief moment, Michael believed he stood before a new beginning. What he did not know was that the mask of repentance sooner or later would begin to crack again. In the days that followed, the house seemed to breathe relief. Victoria once again took charge of household tasks, organized the rooms, and restored a certain brightness to the environment. Michael, tired and conflicted, felt momentarily supported by this new posture. For a few moments he believed that perhaps balance was being restored. The children, however, were not so easily swayed. Ethan, Emma, and Noah watched every gesture of their stepmother with silent caution. Although they accepted her gifts and her smiles, there was an invisible distance that could not be ignored. It was as if their eyes spoke louder than any words. Victoria, in turn, seemed determined to uphold her new version of herself. She prepared meals, helped with the children's schoolwork, and kept the house in order. The scene was almost idyllic, as though everything was back on track. But, like a carefully crafted mask, her dedication seemed to conceal something that was not yet fully healed. Michael, relieved, tried to believe in this change. Each night, he lay beside her thinking the worst had already passed. His heart, still, scarred by recent pain, longed to trust, and that longing made him vulnerable, allowing hope to overshadow reason. Ethan, Emma, and Noah, though calmer, still bore on their faces the memory of days of neglect. Whenever Victoria came close, their reactions were always measured, never spontaneous. Michael noticed this resistance but interpreted it as something temporary, believing time would restore affection. Routine, little by little, took shape again. Breakfast was once more served at the table. Evenings were filled with conversation, and even laughter resurfaced within the walls of the house. It was as if pain had been silenced by an apparent harmony. But superficial harmony never withstands the passage of time. The weight of memories, though hidden, remained alive. The children, more sensitive, could perceive nuances that Michael preferred not to see. The home once marked by absence now lived under the tension of doubt. Was this change real, or merely a carefully crafted performance? Even in this scenario, there were moments when everyone seemed at peace. The sound of the children's laughter mixed with the aroma of dinner prepared by Victoria created an almost perfect atmosphere. Almost. Because deep down, there lingered the sense that trust could not be rebuilt so easily. Michael, torn between reason and emotion, continued to walk the thin line between faith in Victoria's repentance and the bitter memory of what he had endured. And while he convinced himself that life was returning to normal, something deep in his soul warned him. Calm that settles too quickly may be nothing more than the prelude to another storm. It was on an ordinary afternoon that the first crack revealed itself. Michael, immersed in work, received an unexpected call from the school. The triplets were still waiting to be picked up. The clock had long passed the usual time, and the school staff sounded concerned. A wave of discomfort filled his chest even before he confirmed the failure. Victoria had simply forgotten. The same woman who had promised change, who swore she was in treatment and committed to rebuilding trust, had left Ethan, Emma, and Noah stranded and waiting. Michael felt as though her mask had slipped for a moment, revealing what she had tried to hide. The triplets, their eyes weary, climbed into the car when their father finally arrived. The children's silence spoke louder than 1,000 words. There was no complaint, only the weight of a disappointment already familiar. It was as though inside them, hope had learned to protect itself. Michael tried to soothe his heart. He told himself it could have been just a slip, an occasional distraction, but deep down he knew. When it comes to caring for children, there is no room for distractions. Trust, already fragile, faltered even more in the face of reality. When confronted, Victoria downplayed the incident. She said she was tired, that she had lost track of time. Her words, though soft, found no echo in Michael's heart. He knew a safe home could not be built on repeated excuses. What seemed like an isolated mistake was, in truth, a symptom of something greater. Ethan, Emma, and Noah observed every reaction from their father. In the children's eyes, there was a mixture of fear and expectation. Fear of reliving the same traumas. Expectation that Michael would finally protect them. They did not need speeches, but security. Michael, torn, tried to balance the love he still felt for Victoria with the responsibility of being the safe harbor for his children. Every time he looked at them, he realized the line between believing and doubting was becoming thinner. His heart wanted to yield, but his conscience shouted, otherwise it was inevitable. The harmony that once seemed solid now showed fractures. The flaws once invisible were becoming clear. Michael realized this was not an isolated accident, but a pattern that could repeat itself at any moment. Victoria's mask of repentance was beginning to crack before everyone's eyes. And so, the apparent peace that had settled in that house turned into uncertainty. Michael understood, even if he didn't admit it, that the downfall might only be a matter of time. The children's silence and the fragility of trust announced that the worst was yet to come. While Michael was once again away on a business trip, the house took on a completely different tone. Victoria, taking advantage of her husband's absence, decided to organize a party. Friends arrived carrying bottles of wine. Loud music filled. The walls and the home that should have been a refuge for the children became a stage of excess and irresponsibility. So that nothing would disturb her, Victoria locked Ethan, Emma, and Noah in their room. The triplets, only 5 years old, banged on the door, cried and begged to be let out. But to their stepmother, their pleas were nothing more than inconvenient noise in the face of the laughter and pleasure she sought with her guests. The scene in the living room was a cruel contrast to the children's reality. While Victoria smiled, danced and toasted, the children experienced fear and loneliness. The house vibrated with music and loud conversations, but inside the locked room, silence reigned, broken only by childish sobs. It was as if two worlds coexisted under the same roof, completely detached from each other. The triplets, trapped, clung to one another for comfort. Ethan tried to be strong, holding his siblings' hands. Emma cried softly, hiding her face, and Noah, desperate, pounded on the door as if his strength alone could break through the lock. Their childhood was being stained by neglect. Meanwhile, Victoria's guests enjoyed themselves, indifferent to the truth. Loud music, clinking glasses, and bursts of laughter filled the air. Some even commented on the children's absence, but were quickly distracted by more wine or another joke. Selfishness hung thick in the atmosphere like smoke. With each passing minute, the trust Michael had tried to rebuild crumbled without his knowledge. By placing her own desires above the safety of the triplets, Victoria revealed once again her true face. The mask of repentance, already cracked, was now nearly broken in full view. Ethan, Emma, and Noah, still very young, were learning the hard way what it meant to be vulnerable. Fear united them, but it also carved invisible marks that would linger in memory. Their tearful eyes reflected the feeling of abandonment inside their own home. Outside the locked room, the party only grew louder. Victoria, lost in dancing and conversation, laughed out loud as if she were a carefree woman, free of obligations or responsibilities. The image clashed brutally with that of three children begging, locked behind a door. It was inevitable. That episode would be discovered, and when it was, the weight of truth would fall like a storm upon everyone present. Because a house may hide the muffled sounds of crying for a time, but sooner or later, they become far too loud to ignore. Michael, consumed by suspicion, decided to return from his trip earlier than planned. He chose to enter through the back door, avoiding any announcement of his arrival. As soon as he stepped inside, he was met with deafening music and laughter, echoing through the mansion. His heart raced, for he knew something was wrong. Crossing the living room, the sight was devastating. Victoria stood at the center of the party, laughing, dancing, and surrounded by friends. Glasses of wine circulated, and the atmosphere was pure mockery in the absence of her husband. Michael felt his anger rise with every second. But what truly shattered him was not the party itself, but the muffled sounds coming from upstairs. He ran up the stairs, each step filled with desperation. When he burst through the bedroom door, he found Ethan, Emma, and Noah huddled together and crying. The children's cries upon seeing their father tore through the silence. "Daddy! Daddy!" they shouted, running into his arms. Michael embraced them with all his strength, as if in that moment he could heal every wound. The contrast between the false laughter of the party and the raw tears of his children could not have been more cruel. Back downstairs, Michael shut off the music abruptly, shocking the guests. With his children clinging to him, he raised his voice and exposed the truth before everyone. "Look closely. This is the woman you call my wife, the stepmother who locks my children away while she parties as if she were single." Silence replaced the euphoria. Some guests, embarrassed, lowered their heads. Victoria, nervous, tried to slip away quietly, but Michael blocked her path. His voice carried bitter irony as he said, "You're not going anywhere, my love." It was the final sentence declaring that the charade was over. At that moment, two police officers entered through the door. The tension escalated, and Victoria, with a mocking tone, asked, "Arrested? For what? For throwing a party for my friends?" But the response came with undeniable proof. Videos displayed on a phone showed her abuses, the children locked up, drug use, even shoving Ethan days earlier. Michael was stunned as he heard the explanation. The recordings had been provided by Mary Collins, the recently hired housemaid. Unable to watch the children suffer in silence any longer, she had found the courage to document everything. The weight of truth finally crashed down upon Victoria. Handcuffed, Victoria was taken away in front of everyone, her mask of repentance completely destroyed. Michael, holding his children in his arms, gave her a cold, final look. "You will never come near them again." In that moment, Victoria's fall was not only social but moral. forever marked by the truth laid bare. Months had passed since Victoria's downfall, and the mansion finally seemed to breathe new air. The space once marked by parties and arguments had become a true home. The heavy silence that once dominated the halls had been replaced by the innocent laughter of children. Life, little by little, was finding its way again. Michael discovered strength he had never imagined he possessed. Between preparing breakfast, packing school bags, and telling bedtime stories, he learned that being both father and mother required more than effort. It required unconditional love. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but there was also an unexpected joy in it. Ethan, Emma, and Noah, though scarred by trauma, began to blossom once more. With their father's support, they regained lost trust and learned they could still feel safe inside their home. Their smiles, once timid, began to brighten the days again, as though hope had been slowly restored. Mary Collins, the maid who had the courage to expose the truth, became an essential part of this new family. To the triplets, she was no longer just an employee, but someone who offered genuine care and affection. They affectionately called her Aunt Mary, and she reciprocated by treating them as if they were her own children. Michael, in turn, found comfort in Mary's loyalty. Her support not only eased the burden of daily life, but also reminded him that there were still people willing to fight for truth and goodness. This bond of trust made the home stronger, now built on solid ground. There were days when the longing for his late wife weighed heavily. In those moments, Michael gathered the children on the couch and told them stories about their mother. He spoke of the love she had for them and of the promise he had made never to leave them unprotected. It was his way of keeping her memory alive and reinforcing values that could not be lost. Sunday afternoons became special moments. Michael enjoyed sitting on the porch, watching Ethan, Emma, and Noah running through the yard, while Mary prepared a snack in the kitchen. The simple yet vibrant scene brought him the certainty that the family was once again in harmony. There was no perfection, and Michael knew it. But he had learned that perfection was not necessary to build happiness. All that was needed was love, care, and presence. With each new day, he found strength to keep moving forward, sustained by his children's laughter and the warmth of life reborn in his home. And so, as he watched the sun set, painting the sky in golden tones, Michael smiled. It was not only the fulfillment of a promise made to his late wife, but also the birth of a new story. Through tears and hope, he understood. Pain had made way for a new beginning. Stories like that of Michael, Victoria, and the triplets remind us that behind closed doors, there can be secrets capable of changing entire destinies. What once seemed like love turned into abandonment, and what appeared to be repentance revealed itself as nothing more than a mask about to fall. It makes us wonder, how many masks still surround us that we choose not to see? And that's exactly why you need to subscribe to the channel. Here, every story brings not only emotion but also deep reflections that can open your eyes to truths many prefer to ignore. So, click subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next stories will make you question far more than you could ever imagine.